From recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex, I'm your host, Steve Urban, and here is your Riderflex episode of the day. And on today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have my friend Steven Sashen, the co-founder and CEO of Xero Shoes. They manufacture and sell lightweight performance recreation footwear. Great story, cool brand, and Steven himself is such an awesome guy. You're going to love his energy. He's also funnier than hell, gives some great advice on what it's like to be an entrepreneur and start a business. I enjoyed my conversation with him. I think you're going to enjoy it as well. Thanks so much for listening in to the Riderflex podcast. My friends,
crap! We've already started. Man,
we've already started. I got
to do something with my hair. Are you kidding? This is ridiculous.
Oh, Steven Sashen on the Riderflex podcast from Xero Shoes. How you doing, Steven?
I'm well. We just started our Black Cyber Thanks Quansimus Anniversary warehouse clearance and tariff relief sale just a few minutes ago. So I'm a little anxious, to be honest.
Yeah, you're like, why am I'm on the Riderflex podcast. I got to see how many calls that are coming in.
I got to tell you, I don't have to deal with the calls, but honestly, the number of times where I have booked something like this on a day that we're launching a new product or starting some big thing, because I just don't pay attention to my calendar. I really need a personal assistant just to make sure things like this don't happen in the future, but that's not going to happen for a while.
I did get a notification, by the way, of the sale, because of course I follow all the social media. So
I've heard of that social media thing. It's really something. I think it's a fad, but we'll see.
Xero Shoes, correct me if I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
65,000 followers on Facebook. What?
It sounds about right. I got to tell you, it's so funny. When I hear that number, I think, how come it's not 100? So how come it's not 1 million? How come it's not? I'm waiting for it to be a number that's a real number. It's amazing how perspective changes. Like when we were $1 million company, the idea of being a $10 million company seemed like a lot. Now that we're, more than a $10 million company, it's like, whatever.
You've grown it, boy, right there. So the company is how many years old?
10 years old, coming up in 2 days. But,
all right.
But to clarify, like the first couple of years, it was really just like a little hobby business. Like 2 years in it, I remember saying to Lena, wouldn't it be nice to have a little internet-based business, took a couple hours a day, made a couple $100,000 a year? She goes, that's what we have. I went, yep, too bad it can't stay that way. So we didn't get really, we got serious at about the 3-year mark, but the brand really started taking off like 4 years ago. So in my head, it's like a 4-year-old company.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. And north of 10 million now. Congratulations, man. You guys do, like you said, your advertising, your marketing is exceptional. Your following on social media is tremendous and
amazing. Totally amazing.
Yep. And your customers are super passionate about the brand and they engage with it. Really. So
you have no idea how much we have to pay those people to do that. Just to say things that sound natural. I mean, crazy how expensive that is.
By the way, for the listeners, they'll soon know you were a stand-up comedian, right? For a long time. So you throw those one-liners in there. I can barely keep up with them, by the way. So you'll hit them, and I'll be like, oh, there's one right there.
No idea what you're talking about.
So, real quick, will you just give a 5-minute where Steven's from, personal stuff, and then we'll jump back to Xero Shoes?
Okay. When a mommy loves a daddy very much, they will. Do you want me to go back that far? I can go back farther.
Sure. Yeah.
So there was a singularity, and then there's some arguments about what happened before that, but I can go back if you want. I've never had a job. Actually, that's not true. The only time I've ever gotten a paycheck. Wait, let me think about this. The only time I've ever gotten a paycheck was either doing something that I could do whatever I wanted, or doing something that was just goofy fun anyway. In other words, that was when I was performing for a living. But otherwise, I've never had a job. I've never had a resume. I've never had a CV. I've never had any of those other things you would need. I've never been interviewed for a job of any kind that I can think of.
Wow.
I've been tempted to apply for jobs just to see what it's like. Things that I'm completely not qualified for, just for the fun of it. But I haven't had the time.
Where'd you grow up?
Outside of DC, Bethesda, Maryland.
Bethesda, Maryland. Okay. All right. What did you go to high school? Like Bethesda High School, or what is that?
No. I went to Walt Whitman High School.
Walt Whitman. All right. And
Does that mean anything to you?
what'd your folks do? Well, I lived in Bethesda for a while, so
What? Where?
yeah. What's the main street that
Well, there's like three of them. There's,
uh
Wisconsin Avenue. There's Georgetown.
Wisconsin Avenue? I was over there somewhere in a little corporate apartment for like 3
Oh,
years.
cool.
I used to walk down to the little bars and restaurants and
Yeah, when I was growing up, those things didn't exist.
right.
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
it literally, it has no city government. It was just a blip on a map. But so my parents, I mean, this is actually, you might find this interesting. I was thinking about it the other day. I'm an entrepreneur and I am I think third generation of such. So my dad is a dentist. He had his own practice. My
okay.
mother had numerous jobs throughout her life. I kind of take after her. She had a dental practice management consulting business for a while after she'd been helping my dad for a bit. For the last at least dozen years or so, she started a promotional product business. So, anything with a logo on it kind of thing.
So what? So both of them, entrepreneurs, business owners.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then my father's father the same, my mother's father the same.
All right.
I think I can go back at least one more generation on at least one side. So
I see.
it never just never occurred to me to do it. I mean,
After
it was never even a conversation.
Gotcha. How did you decide to go to Duke, by the way? And getting into Duke is not like an easy deal.
Well, I don't know. I sent an application. They said yes. What the hell do I know? I mean, how hard is that?
But how'd you pick Duke? I'm just curious.
So I was living in Maryland, and I wanted to go to a good school that was warmer than where I was. Pardon me, something's caught my eye. So, and so Duke was my first choice for that reason.
Gotcha.
And so
you were a psych major.
I was a psych major. I remembered something the other day that I totally blanked out on for some silly reason. I was a psych major. I was a pre-med. Once I realized I wasn't going to go to med school, I was focusing on business and marketing things. And the business school had a program where they accepted one or two undergrads in the first year business school for the entrepreneurship program.
Okay.
And I have no idea how it happened other than, again, I applied, I got in, but I remember that it's like, oh yeah, I was in that entrepreneurial thing. I think I helped someone who was actually in the business school almost fail because I didn't do as much work as he was expecting me to do, but nonetheless. But my favorite thing about the program and maybe the only thing I remember is on the first day, the teacher, who was an entrepreneur, way better dressed than I, way shorter hair than I, he said, so, what's an entrepreneur? And everybody had their answers. Someone who creates businesses, someone who thinks outside the box, someone who makes products and brings them to market, someone, went on and on and on. And finally he says, no, an entrepreneur is someone who's worth $50 million on paper and they need to borrow $5 from you for lunch. And, that really stuck. And actually two other things I just remembered, one that did stick with me. One was, do you remember the Horchow collection, that catalog?
I don't know.
It was, kind of like higher end mail order stuff, expensive stuff, kind of pre-sharper image, but that kind of thing. And we met, I think it was Arnold Horchow, who said he was launching a new catalog where the least expensive thing was $25,000. It was all like high-end furniture. And he's asked the class, so I have to buy a mailing list to mail to. Should I buy a mailing list of people who live in high income, affluent zip codes, or should I buy the same number of names from people who bought those return address stickers for $1? And everyone said, well, affluent neighborhood. He goes, no, return address stickers, because they've demonstrated they're willing to spend money by calling somebody or mailing in a check.
Wow.
And then he followed up with us later after he sent out the catalog. He said, we sent out the catalog. We sold out of everything in under a week.
Wow. That's amazing. That is fascinating. Yeah. So, okay. And then now early on, so you got the entrepreneurial bug and all that stuff. You're going to Duke. Did you know at that time you wanted to go to Columbia and go to film school? And were you like, I want to go to Columbia first, and then I want to go to Hollywood? Like, was that the plan, or
dude, you have this idea that I've planned anything? You do not know me. One of the things that in the beginning of my relationship with my wife, I had to get her to stop asking me hypothetical questions about the future. So I just don't do that.
You're like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, but the hell do I know? So no, what happened is I So I was at Duke. They opened a comedy club in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I went there and auditioned, and I became the house MC for this comedy club.
I see.
And then the guy who booked that club booked like 10 other rooms. And he said, if you want to, get 10 weeks worth of work, I'll give you 10 weeks worth of work. So I took one extra class my last year of college so I could graduate early and went on the road. And that 10 weeks turned into 10 months. And then I moved to Manhattan, and I was working at Catch a Rising Star on the Improv and Comedy Cellar, and all the clubs around the city.
Wow.
And after a year or 2 years maybe, I was kind of, it's not that I was bored, but the life of a comedian, you make phone calls to get gigs, you hang out with your friends, you work for an hour a day. It's awesome. But I was also, looking for something, and I met a guy, in fact, a guy who drove the comedians around to certain gigs. He had just applied to Columbia Film School, and he was telling me about it. I went, that sounds like a good combination of things that I'm interested in, writing and producing and possibly directing. And it all sounded compelling. And so I applied. And again, for some reason, they let me in, I think because I was willing to pay them, and ended up getting a master's degree in film at Columbia. And while I was there, I was mostly writing screenplays. I found out that I don't like producing. As a director, I work well with actors, but I don't like the other aspects of directing.
Okay.
was actually a good actor, and somehow. And
Yep.
But writing was kind of my thing. And so I won some award for writing. And I ended up inventing what became the industry standard word processing software for film and television writers, because the stuff that existed, I hated. And I figured out why, and I figured out a solution that no one had ever thought of before. And in fact, to this day, that program launched in late 1992. And to this day, none of the myriad other screenwriting programs have been able to copy what we created back then.
Wow. Is this something you had like patented and you sold for millions of dollars, or what's
I wish. You want to hear a horrible business story? So we were crushing it. We literally took over the industry and put a few companies out of business very quickly.
Okay.
And we were the standard program. And one of my competitors did something that I never imagined doing in a million years. They called like the biggest distributor and said, what do we have to do to get you to stop selling Sashen's program? And they had an answer. And so they, so that and my kind of getting bored after the company had grown to 1 million or so, I was bored.
Okay.
And a number of other things led to, somebody was going to buy the company for a couple million. And this is a good story. Boy, shit, I haven't thought of this in a while. I'm on the phone. It's three guys, one of whom had been a consultant for us from the early days, been a big fan, very, very helpful. And then two partners. And I'm on the phone. They said, look, we're going to take this thing over. So why don't we make your life easy? Just send us all the computers. We'll run it day to day, all taken care of. So I sent everything out to California. They were running it not as well as they could have. And at one point, I'm on the phone with all three of them. And one of the guys says, I decided to test and see how good your list was. So I made some phone calls to see, what your customers thought of you and things like that. And your list is horrible. I said, really? Why do you say that? He said, well, I called, some number of people. I said, how many? And he said, whatever the number was, I don't know. I said, when did you do this? And he gives me some time period. I said, well, I got two questions. One, how did you do that? Because the amount of time that you said you spent doing this and the amount of calls you said you made meant you were making a call every 7 seconds. Secondly, you were using my voice over internet protocol phone. And so I have access to the phone records, and you said you used my phone. I don't see any outbound calls for any day for the entire week before and after when you said you did this. So then he flips out. And when he stops screaming at me, I say, righteous indignation is the number one predictor of guilt.
Right.
At which point he slams the phone down, and the other two guys were like, let me get back to you. And they called back a couple days later and said, yeah, we just found out that he's been embezzling. And so we can't make this deal.
Wow.
And so during that time, they had really kind of taken the company into a bit of a dumpster fire.
What was the name of the entity or the company or the brand?
The program's called Scriptware, Scriptware.
Okay.
It still exists. You'll find a website that hasn't been updated since about 1995.
How old were you during this time?
I started it when I was 32, I think.
Were there lots of experiences for you at that point around all this, like cap tables and operating agreements and deal that? Like, were you?
All I knew is I had a better idea. In fact, honestly, the reason that they so surprised me with this plan of, let's go to the biggest retailer and try and screw the other guy is I think like an individual sport athlete, best man wins. That's how I assumed business worked as well. I didn't know any better. I still operate under that flawed mythological belief, and I have to talk myself out of it on a very regular basis. I can't make myself think in and more importantly behave in truly devious ways. I can think of some things to do that I haven't done because I would never do them.
Yeah.
But I know they exist.
Yep.
So, but it's a tricky thing. But no, I knew nothing. I'd never developed a piece of software. I'd never run a company. I'd never hired a person. I'd never done any.
There was no lawyers involved. Yeah, none of that stuff was going on during this time. No.
Well, I had lawyers involved. I brought people in.
Yeah.
Because I had to. But I'll tell you, I'll kind of address this in a kind of funny way. When my wife and I started Xero Shoes, at one point she was at the end of the day very upset, and she said, "I feel like I don't know what I'm doing." I said, "Well, no one knows what they're doing. Your job isn't to know what you're doing because no one's ever done this before. Your job is to walk in every morning and figure out what the hell happened overnight and how did it break and what do we do next." She says, "Oh, I can do that." I went, "Yeah, I know you can." She has become this mind-blowingly brilliant business person. I'm the same marketing douche that I always was, but this idea that you need to know anything in advance is completely false. And even more, the number one predictor of failure is someone having a previous success.
Yeah.
They learned it.
Yeah. This whole thing of, well, if I start a business, I got to have this perfect plan and a 30. Yeah. Right.
It's the Mike Tyson line. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Right. Yeah. It's so true. I meet people like that all the time. Like, well, I'm working on my 30-page pitch deck and my 5-year financial model. I'm like, what are you talking about?
There's a good reason and a bad reason to do it. The bad reason is if you think it has any relationship to reality.
Right.
The good reason is because if you're going to be talking to investors, they need to see how you think, and you need to be able to justify every assumption that you've made to put those numbers together so you can talk about the assumptions and see what they're bringing to the table so that they can tweak those assumptions and then tweak the numbers accordingly. You want to have a model that people can get into and pull the levers on and flip the switches on so they can see what would happen if you weren't such a moron.
Did you have to build all that and present all that when you went on Shark Tank? Did you have to
No, for getting on Shark Tank, it's in the application process. You have to put it, I don't remember what we had to present in terms of financials. I know we had to talk about our historicals and what we were projecting for the next year, but I don't remember. I have a sneaking suspicion we had to give them whatever financials we had.
Okay.
I can't really remember.
Okay. Was that back in the day? You didn't have to give them a piece of your company just to get on the show.
That was back in the day where you had to do the math on an abacus. And so, no, you never had to give them a piece of the company. This was a great bit of urban folklore.
Okay.
So there was, during the early seasons, Lane and I were in season 4.
Okay.
You signed a contract that said they had an option for 2%. I might be getting this backwards. It's either 2% equity or 5% net profits for some period of time.
Okay.
Or the other way around. I can't remember which, but it was an option that expired in 3 years and that they had only exercised once prior to us, kind of. There was a company that went on the show and then closed a deal that was in play before they had even taped the show. And so they negotiated with the show saying, look, we're not going to pay you any royalty or any commission, but what we'll let you do is come tape and pretend that you had something to do with making this deal.
I see.
Do a follow-up.
I see.
Do that. So they pulled that whole segment of the contract out. Mark Cuban says it was because he insisted. I don't know if that's true or not, but either way, it was certainly hindering some people's decision about going on the show.
You got an offer, right? They made you an offer, didn't they? Somebody did. I think.
Sorry, that was offer with air quotes. Yeah. So we went in offering 8% of the company for $400,000. That's a $5 million valuation.
Okay.
At that time, we had done, I think that year we were projecting 650 in sales. But we had come to that valuation based on two things. One, we talked to venture capitalists, private equity guys, people who bought shoe companies, sold shoe companies, bankers who dealt with shoe companies, and they gave us a range between 2 and 10. And so we knew we could feel comfortable justifying 5. And we also knew that they were going to want to talk us down. And we were willing to get talked down to 2.5. And they just didn't do that at all. They didn't come close.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't know if somebody threw out a number. Well, oh, they probably did throw out a number, but it
Well,
was
yeah. So what happened?
super low.
So we said, 8% of the company for 400 grand. Kevin says, I'll give you 400 grand for 50%. And it was such a non-starter that Lane and I like forgot that he even made the offer. And at one point, Robert says, there's an offer on the table. And we said, what? Oh, that? Oh, no.
No. Yeah. And now, so you hadn't hit 1 million, or how much were you doing in volume when you were on the show?
I think the previous year we had done just under 6, but don't hold me to it.
Okay. Okay. Wow. I mean, you've really built the business up since then. So let's talk about the whole entrepreneurial advice, if you don't mind for a minute.
Okay, sure.
I mean, you've been super successful. I mean,
Well, wait till the check clears and you're visiting me on the island. Until then, I've been working my ass off.
You are a hustler, bro, and I love that about you. Tell me this. I mean, if somebody out there has an idea,
throw it away. Wait till someone else does it.
I mean, what would you tell? Would you tell them?
Throw it away. Wait till someone else does it. No, I'm being only barely glib. When I come up with an idea and then someone else does it, I am so happy because then I don't have to. And there are a lot of them. There's some things that people haven't done right, in my opinion, and so that I want to go do them, but that doesn't happen very often. But the odds of having a good idea is really slim.
It is, isn't it?
And
Yep.
most people think their ideas are good because they like them and their friends and family like them. And who gives a crap what your friends and family think? My advice is find the fastest, easiest, cheapest way to see if people you've never met will give you money spontaneously. The way people used to do this in the olden days is they would run an ad in a newspaper, either a classified ad or a full page ad, whatever they could afford, and they would see if they could get people to send them checks. And they would see if those checks were going to cover the amount of advertising plus the cost of manufacturing the product. And if so, they would then make the product. And if not, they would, return all the checks.
Can't you do that today with social media? Kind of, a little bit.
You kind of can. The taking the money thing. The law technically is if someone gives you money, you have to be able to ship a product within 30 days or give them their money back. But you can. I mean, what we did. The way Xero Shoes started, I mean, the short version of the story is I built a website one night, despite my wife telling me not to, but she was asleep, so she didn't know. and then I put it online, and I gave away the recipe, if you will. I literally made videos saying, here's how to make our products. Here's where you can go get the materials, knock yourself out, or, we've already put it together for you at a better price.
And can I just pause you for a minute? At that moment, when you did that, were you thinking, I'm going to build this $10 million company? Or were you like, I just, it tied back to your belief about the way shoes were damaging feet?
No, I hadn't even gotten that far. I really loved the whole, I'd gotten back into sprinting when I was 45. I was getting injured all the time. A friend of mine told me to try taking off my shoes and running barefoot. Changed my life, made my injuries go away. I became faster. I became a Masters All-American sprinter, which meant I was one of the fastest guys over at that time 45.
Wow.
In America. Technically, for men over 55, you're possibly looking at the fastest Jew in the world. Just FYI. And so I liked that whole barefoot experience and wanted to have that as often as I could. So I started making these super simple sandals
for yourself.
Yeah, for me, for my wife, for a couple other barefoot runners.
And then you built the website to be like, hey, I just want to share this with you.
Actually, someone said I'm writing a book about barefoot running, and I got a contract. And if you had a website, I'd put you in the book. So I rushed home and pitched this brilliant idea to my wife, who told me not to do it because I was an idiot.
There's no company formed at that point. There's none of that.
No. I had to make up a name like that night.
How'd you come up with Xero Shoes?
I didn't. I came up with Invisible Shoes, and I couldn't get invisibleshoes.com, but I could get invisibleshoe.com. Okay. And later I met, the way Xero happened, there's two parts to the story. One is I met a guy who used to be the VP of marketing for Schwinn Fitness, and he had heard about me. We'd never met. We get together, and the first thing he says when he sees me, he goes, I can see them. I said, yeah, but it feels like they're invisible. He goes, I can see them. I said, all right. So we worked with what turned out to be a very expensive marketing agency early on. And they came up with some horrible names. Here's one. Just see here. You might have to write this down. XOICS.
XOI. I don't even know. How do you say it?
I don't know. So that was the problem. I said, don't know how to say it, don't know how to spell it. We're an internet company. They said, but you can own it. I went, I don't have the money to get people to learn how to say some weird collection of things, but I like the X. And so
By the way, how are you bootstrapping this at the time? There's no revenue. So how are you paying for this marketing firm and doing all this stuff?
oh no, at this point we had money. I mean, this is about 2 years in.
Okay.
So,
All right.
I mean, we didn't have a lot of money, but we had some money.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, so I like the X. And one day after I was done training on the track, I was literally just sitting in my car thinking, I like the X. What can I do that starts with an X? And I thought of Xero.
Okay.
And then I thought of the logo and, kind of all popped in my head. So,
And Xero Shoes was available when you looked it up on GoDaddy. It was still there.
Xero Shoes was available. Xero Shoes was not available. And the guy who had it wouldn't sell it. He wanted $50,000 for it. And I told him that was ridiculous. And so I just paid to have an ad on the site wasn't there. It was just AdWords or AdSense ad, just links to other things. Okay. So I paid and did the sneaky thing to make sure my ad showed up on his site. And it said, are you looking for xeroshoes.com? Click here. So instead of giving him 50 grand, I was giving him like $10 a month worth of AdSense revenue. And then he did a stupid thing. He sold the domain to a Denver domain company. And I contacted them and I said, you know that I have the trademark for Xero Shoes. So you shouldn't have bought this because I can petition and it'll cost me $2,000 and I'll own it and you get nothing. You lose whatever you paid, or, I'll be a nice guy. I'll give you $1,000 if you give it to me right now. They said, done.
Okay. All right. At what point did you know that you had something real? At what
Day
point
one.
did you knew? Yeah.
Because on day one, I mean, I launched the site, I posted a couple links and, some news groups, or it wasn't even a Facebook page that anyone used. It was like Google Groups. And people responded to it. We sold our first pair like the day I launched the site to a guy which was in late November, to a guy in Minnesota.
Did you have the material? What are you making these things at home?
So to answer your question of how we financed it originally, that wasn't actually your question, but that's what I thought you were going to ask. Is I was buying material for $50 that we were selling for $100, and then I would buy $100 worth and we'd sell it for $200, and lather, rinse, and repeat. And so, but the thing that also convinced us was in early spring, like March. Lane and I are walking downtown on the Pearl Street Mall, and this pack of girls, like 17-year-old girls, run up and point at our feet and go, "Oh, those sandals are sick. Where do you get those?" And I said, "We're billionaires." So I haven't cracked that code yet. There's a there.
Because it was sandals. At first, it was sandals.
At first, it was a do-it-yourself sandal making kit. Could not have been more finicky. I mean, you had to cut it out and lace them up, and yeah, it was crazy.
And you launched the website, and boom, you're shipping these kits like right away.
Yeah. Out of the floor of a corner of a spare bedroom. We literally had a discussion about, should we go buy a folding table and take stuff off the floor? And then another one, should we buy 2 more tables? I mean, they're $34 each. That's, are we committed to this?
Can I just ask you, how are you, if you don't mind, maybe this is too personal, but like, how are you living? How are you surviving, eating? What, did you have like a ton of money saved up to get through this period?
Like the opposite. Actually, it's kind of funny. Not funny. So Lane and I had been retired from 2000 to 2009. We'd done some clever real estate investing that was throwing off just enough cash that we didn't have to work. Not, huge amount, but enough that, like, if someone gave you just enough money where you wouldn't have to work again, would you take it and not work? And the answer is yeah. So we saw, it was all based in real estate. And in 2006, we saw the writing on the wall and started selling all of the properties that we were owning or managing. And, we were about to run out of money, and we had maybe a month's worth of money, maybe a tiny bit more.
Okay. That's a little scary. All right.
Well, for Lena, I think we were maybe 2 months out, and I said, "Look, I'll think of something." Oh, I know what it was. Well, I said, "I'll think of something to do." I mean, I'm not at a point where I'll do anything. I mean, I know ways of making money, but I'm not ready to do those yet because I don't feel back up against the wall enough. But we had started a search engine marketing business, and so that was bringing in some cash. And because I've been an internet marketer since 1992. And so in a way, when I built a website and showed it to Lena the next morning and she got all mad at me, I said, think of it as a case study for our search engine business, because I'm starting it from nothing and I'll probably own this category in about 3 months. And it only took me about 6 weeks.
I see.
And so that was the idea. I mean, to be honest, I don't even know the answer to your question really, because I don't know that we even took a salary. But the reason I don't know the answer is that when Lane and I became a couple, she took over everything related to finance, and I don't have a clue about anything about our finances for the last 20 years.
You know what? We're in the same boat, my friend. I always tell my wife, I'm like, if something happens to you, like, I don't even know like how to get into anything. I don't passwords
I
or
hear a rumor
whatever.
that we have a checking account somewhere. I've seen a safety deposit key. I don't know where it is.
I remember my dad used to tell me, he's like, well, how do you know she's not like putting money somewhere that you don't know about? I'm like, I hope she is. Great, good for her.
Well, my version of that is I don't, we're both relatively frugal people. And so, she hasn't said, hey, you can't buy it yet.
Is it now? It's interesting. Does she run the finances for the business too?
Yeah.
She's your in-house CFO, basically.
She is the co-founder and CFO.
Gotcha. That's so awesome. So tell us now, like, as today, Xero Shoes, like give us the 3-minute Xero Shoes, overview, right? Like the Stephen Sashen overview of the company.
Well, it's actually easier than that. I just like to ask people, when they ask me what I do for a living, I say, well, just here's what's going to sound like a weird question, but do your feet feel better at the end of the day than they did at the beginning of the day? And no one ever says yes. And I go, well, that's because your shoes aren't letting your feet do what they're naturally supposed to do, which is bend and flex and move and feel things. You have a quarter of the bones and joints of your whole body are in your feet and ankles, and you have more nerve endings in your soles than anywhere at your fingertips and your lips.
I didn't know that.
Shoes don't let you do that. We make shoes that are designed to let your feet do what's natural. Plus, they're so lightweight. We've had people email saying they accidentally got into bed wearing them still because they forgot they were on, not because they passed out drunk. And so we make shoes and boots and sandals that people use for everything from taking a walk to running ultra marathons to just going to work all day.
How do you not lose sleep at night over the competition or over Nike or Adidas is like, oh, we're going to make Xero Shoes too.
To quote cavemen, competition good. You may have noticed, let's use a different business other than footwear. How many companies make cars?
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, you're right.
How many companies make laundry detergent? How many companies make anything you've ever bought? If you don't have competition, there's something wrong.
Right. Probably.
There's always a way to differentiate yourself, either through product or marketing or both. Frankly, Nike most recently came out talking about natural movement almost the way we do for a product that couldn't be further away. But the fact that they're using my language is really good for us. It validates what we're doing. And here's what I can tell you. The CEOs of every major footwear company know that what we're doing is the real deal. And they also know that they can't do it authentically because it would be telling everyone that what they've been doing for the last 50 years is complete bullshit.
Right. Exactly. Now, are you thinking that one of these guys, they're going to call you and say, hey, we want to buy the company? Like,
I don't know. If they're smart, they would, for a list of reasons, either offensively or defensively.
Yep.
The thing about natural movement, I met some guys who had been in footwear for 35 years when we first got this business started, like 7 months in.
They're like, you're smoking crack, man.
No. They said, what you're doing is the most important thing in footwear, and no one's doing it.
Wow.
This is when all we were doing was, a piece of rubber strapped to your foot. So everybody in footwear knows this. Or more accurately, everyone who's been in footwear for a while knows this.
I see.
The people who've been indoctrinated since the advent of padding and motion control, they still think padding and motion control is in some form legitimate. It's completely not. So Dr. Irene Davis from Harvard did it best at a panel discussion at the American College of Sports Medicine that I was on with some guys from Brooks and Adidas. She says, which was fun in and of itself. She says, in the 60s, we were running in super thin soled running shoes. We played basketball in Chuck Taylors. We weren't seeing the kind of injury or the type of injury or the severity of injury we're seeing now. So what problem were you trying to solve and why didn't it work? And the Adidas and Brooks guys had no response. And I said, let's just call it the way it is. The more you understand about feet and biomechanics and the more you understand about the research behind natural movement, the more it becomes impossible to conclude anything other than the design of the modern athletic shoe is just wrong.
Wow.
And the guy from Adidas says,
wow.
Yeah, but not everyone's going to switch to your shoes right away. Which is true because, they've indoctrinated people.
Yep.
My thought was, wow, you just told me that I got about a $500 million runway till you freak out. I can work with that.
Wow. I mean, all these years they've been telling us we got to have all this
lying. Use the right verb, please.
Wow.
Line.
Wow. Unbelievable. So yeah, buy this shoe and smoke these cigarettes or all these things they used to tell us to do. And
Yeah, well, cigarettes are good for your lungs because you're inhaling. That was literally an old ad. The shoes will help will help you run faster. Check this one out. So Eliud Kipchoge just ran the sub-2 hour marathon.
right.
Everyone's making it seem like it's because of the shoes. Let's do a little math, shall we? We can do this fast. First of all, this is one of the greatest athletes of all time. World champion marathoner, holds the world record 2 hours, 1 minute, 38 seconds on a regular marathon course that goes uphill, downhill, faster, slower, has people who, pass him. Typically he's in front for the whole thing, but regardless, he's just on his own running a race.
Yeah.
Then they put him on a perfect course that just goes back and forth a couple times, totally flat, great, elevation. The temperature happens to be perfect. He's got 5 guys in front of him in a V shape that he's drafting on who are pacing because they're running against like these laser lines that are projected on the road from a car in front of them. They swap out on a regular basis with new pacers. They got a pacer behind him because he likes to feel like he's being chased. And he runs basically 2 minutes faster. Okay. That's 4.6 seconds per mile faster. And you think it's because of the shoes?
Yeah. Well, is that how they pitched it? What was the shoe? I don't even, what was he wearing? I had no idea.
It's this Nike shoe that has, carbon fiber and certain magic foam. And, I think the primary ingredient is just placebo.
I see. Okay. All right. And right now, of course, everybody can just go to xeroshoes.com, right? With an X.
Yes, xeroshoes.com, and depending on when they're seeing this, and again, we just started our Black Cyber Thanks Quantum Biscuits anniversary warehouse clearance and tariff release sale.
I'm waiting for the case of shoes to show up at my house. Do I need to resend you my address?
And your money. I mean, we have a buy one, get the one you bought policy.
Okay. Okay. Can I ask a couple of questions here? I want to come back to the entrepreneurial stuff just really quick. Do you? And I know you always, and I've talked to you a couple of times, you always hesitate a little bit to give too much advice on the entrepreneurial stuff. You're careful a little bit.
Well, it's not that I'm careful. I'm honest. I mean, anyone who gives you real advice has their head up their ass. And I'm not trying to be, funny when I say that. Like, here's the thing. Okay. We're going to get really deep. Let's go back to the big bang.
Let's do it.
Human beings, the entire process of thinking is fundamentally designed to try to figure out what we need to do to be happy in some imagined future, some distance from now, a moment, a minute, a year, whatever. Okay. Here's what we forget. We forget that we're really, really bad at predicting this. The things that we thought would make us happy didn't. If we get them, the things that we thought we'd never get over, we get over. We're really bad at imagining how we're going to feel in the future under some imaginary circumstance. We're even worse at remembering how bad we are. And we think we're special. We think that, that, let's say, think about winning the lottery. Well, we hear about lottery winners that they're no happier than they were before they won the lottery, but we think, yeah, but if I won, I'm special. So because we're always trying to figure out what's going to make us happy in the future, the next thing we do is try to figure out how to get there. And what we do is that we look at other things and try to come up with stories about how someone seemed to get to this future that we want, ignoring again that if you met that person, you would find out they're no happier than you are.
Right.
Probably worse in many circumstances.
Right. Yep.
Well, what we're doing is called hindsight bias and survivorship bias. We're looking at the people who happen to survive and get to what we want after they've already done it. We're not looking at the myriad of other people and companies that started at the same time that had all the exact same things in place and fell apart for some reason. For a long time, Enron was one of the greatest companies of all time. Right before IBM laid off 20,000 people, they were one of the greatest hiring companies around. People forget that Apple during the 90s was a giant piece of shit company. They had they had done the Newton and a bunch of other things that failed miserably. The Lisa, people were thinking this company was on the way out. Remember Nokia?
Yeah.
They owned cell phones.
That's right.
Owned it. Remember Motorola when they then owned cell phones?
Yeah. Yep.
So we just forget all these things. And so I'm not going to give anyone, there's no prescription for doing this. I mean,
There's no clear, like, here's the exact plan, black and white. Yeah, it just doesn't.
no. Now, but now the flip side is there are some things that you can be aware of about how you fail, and it doesn't prevent you from falling into these same circumstances, but at least you're doing it knowingly. So for example, if you walk up to, you meet people, most people in business have stories of, revenue and income going up and down and up and down.
Yep.
Talk to someone who's had their revenue hit the floor a few times, and then ask them, if you were teaching a college course on how to fail, what would you teach? They get very animated. If you're giving a how-to on how to go from, $100,000 a day to nothing, what would you teach? They get very animated. And they say things like, we got really overextended. We had, we were over leveraged. And then something happened that we didn't predict and we couldn't pay the bills. Or we had a competitor that, figured out what we did and found a way to do it better. Or there were some other competitors who, like what happened with my software company, they just did an underhanded thing and pulled the market out from underneath me. Or, there's, those things are very teachable lessons, but they're not sexy. They don't tell you how to get what you want. They don't tell you that you're going to be happy when you have $1 million in a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, whichever stupid car you want to buy, and and you're on wife number 5 or whatever it is. The advice just allows us to live in a vacuum. Look, I'm gonna rail on someone in particular.
Okay.
And maybe he'll call me and we'll argue about it. So one of the people. So I would like to take all the books about how to build a successful business, especially if it's the inner game of building a business, or the secrets of building a business. I want to take all those books and burn them, and I want to take all the TED Talks about that and destroy them. And one of the ones that I find the most repugnant, what the hell, is the one from Simon Sinek saying, it's all about, you have to have a why. Complete bullshit.
Is it?
Because, there are lots of companies who don't have some hoity-toity why. They just wanted to make some money. They just wanted to keep food on the family's table, or whatever the line is. Or, they had horrible, or they just stumbled on something and made a shit ton of cash before they even knew what the hell they were doing. For us, that was kind of, we didn't make a shit ton of cash, but for us, we had some ideas, but we didn't have some big why. That really evolved as we understood what the hell we were doing. But even still, it's not the same. So he uses Apple as an example, again, forgetting that Apple was a piece of crap company in the 90s. And there are innumerable examples of companies with great why stories that have failed miserably.
Yeah.
There are great stories, innumerable stories of companies that you find just repulsive, that make more money than you can't even count the number of zeros they make. It's just selective reasoning. But here's the thing. It makes us feel good because we can't control all these things out there. And we know that. So if someone gives you something that you think you control, like come up with a good mission statement, you feel better. You feel like you've got some control over the universe. This is going to sound like it's a weird thing, but it's highly related. Almost every system for making money in the stock market focuses on when you get into this stock, when you buy the stock, when you start the trade. But you don't make money till you get out of the trade.
Right.
And in fact, if you look at your statement from a brokerage, let's say you bought something at 10 and now it's at 20. So that $10 profit there, it's not profit. On your statement, it says unrealized profits.
Right.
It's not real until you exit, until you get out of the market, until you stop trading. And it's just the same thing in business. These are all, we think of all these things there. Look, when you call me a success, I literally have no frame of reference for that. I'm a guy working his ass off every day. And we're paying ourselves about 1/4 to 1/5 of what people who do our jobs in big companies get.
That's good.
Yep. And maybe someday someone's going to offer us a big wad of cash. Somebody, look, I'll be honest. We have a fractional CFO that we do some work with, who said to Lena and me, if somebody offered you $40 million, but you knew they were going to trash the company, would you take it? Without missing a beat, we said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
She said, what about $100 million? We said, okay, so you called us a whore and you're right. At a certain level, I'm a 57-year-old guy.
Do you think it's critical to do something that ties to a personal passion? And the reason I ask that is because
no.
Okay.
For me, that's the only way I can do it. It doesn't, if I'm not really
Yeah.
interested, it doesn't get me out of bed.
Right.
But who cares what I do? I know a lot of people who have businesses where their personal passion is making money.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean, do you think people in the vending machine business feel a personal passion for selling potato chips and candy? No, they found a business that
Uh,
allows them to have a great lifestyle. I mean, if they do it well, they have a great lifestyle without a whole lot of work.
gotcha.
I'm
Gotcha.
I am I'm all for doing something that allows you to live the life that you want to live. And you don't need to justify it to anybody else by saying you're changing the world. We're trying to change the world. We didn't set out that way, but the more we got into seeing what the footwear industry is and does, and
Mhm.
what products like ours are and do, we're on fire, because I don't like it when people make a living lying to other people. I just
Mhm.
didn't know the extent of it when I started. I
Mhm.
I learned that very quickly, and it was shocking.
Would you encourage startups to do this, to get on social media early and get a following even before? I mean,
I encourage them to participate in the conversations that are relevant for the product that they think they're going to be offering.
okay.
See what people are saying, see what people are doing, see what they're happy with, see what they're frustrated with, provide value in some way by participating in the conversation, not trying to sell something.
Hmm.
And if if you understand what's going on enough, then when you're ready to offer something, people already know who you are. You built up some trust. There's an opportunity. There's a friend of mine years ago had a line. He says, making money is easy, just figure out where the money is flowing and get in the way. And so if there's an audience
Love it.
that you think is going to be relevant for you, see where they're already spending their money or want to be spending their money. And just, your job is just to get in the way, ideally by providing something of real value. And
Hmm.
when I say that, I think about all the people that I know who sell courses on how to make money, who've made a lot of money. And again, I think they should all walk the gangplank.
Talk to us real quick about your podcast, Movement Podcast. Do you want to do?
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Well, so I like to say that what we're doing with Zero Shoes is creating a movement, because we're supporting this idea of natural movement and the fun and benefits that that gives you. And so I created a podcast. Let's just say not voluntarily. I was getting on a lot of podcasts,
Yep.
and I went to a podcast convention-y thing, and
Yep.
I did a little 60-second spiel about what I do. And I was hoping that, maybe 40 people would want to put me on their podcast. And like 60 people said, I want you on my podcast. And then
Yep.
it hit me, oh crap, that's about 80 hours worth of work that I wasn't expecting to do. But then somebody on one of them said to me that she had been hanging out at Google and found out that Google is scraping podcasts for the content and using that for search engine optimization in certain ways. So I
Ah,
said, oh, well, I'm already ranting about natural movement and footwear already. I
I
may as
see.
well just, do that as a podcast and as another marketing arm. And so that's how it started. It's doing well. We've got about 160, 170,000 downloads in the
That's
last couple of
great.
months.
Oh, that's fantastic. And
Um,
if you just look up movement, is that
jointhemovementmovement.com.
okay? Awesome. Oh, congratulations. I was watching some episodes this morning. Matter of fact,
Oh, cool.
you're great on camera, and that's what I really love about you, Stephen. If I could just, and I know you don't like to take
Are you
compliments
hitting
because
on me?
every time I try to give you a compliment, you try to stop me. But first of all, your energy is outstanding, right? Your passion is contagious, and you're hustling, man. I mean, you hustle, you work your ass off. I mean, you guys are all over the place. You're not just sitting around thinking, oh, you know,
No,
money's gonna fall out of the sky. Like, no,
no.
you got to hustle, and you do, and I love that about you.
Well, that's very kind. We had an employee early on who had tried to start a website selling ultralight backpacking gear,
Okay.
and it wasn't going very well. So he came to work for us. And after 6 months, he quit. And we said, why are you leaving? And he said, well, because I realized why my business wasn't succeeding. And we said, why? He goes, because you guys work your asses off.
That's right.
I wasn't willing to do that. And now that I get it, I'm going to go give it a shot.
Yeah, for all those millennials listening who want to start a business, if you think it's easy, it's not. No,
Well,
you've got to
let
work
me
your
say
ass
something
off.
about that. It depends on what your goals are. I know a lot of millennials, and I'm not trying to single them out, but it was just a feature of timing that a bunch of people in their early to mid 20s started businesses that they were outsourcing everything, and they were, whatever they were selling, it didn't really matter. They were basically trying to live the way they thought Tim Ferriss lived, which is not the way Tim Ferriss ever lived. But regardless, they were trying to do a 4-hour work week thing and have a nice little lifestyle business. And I knew a number of them who did. But then for many of them, there became an inflection point where they realized that if they were going to make this thing real, they had to get real. And they, now they have jobs,
Right.
And they're working their butts off, or
Right.
they're developing software and they're working their butts off. And, some of them have gotten investment capital, and so they're going to do okay no matter what. Good for them. I say with envy. And others are, they're just doing the job. But I like to say that when people ask me about business success, I go, well, when I was in film school, there was a director, someone asked him, how do you make a good movie? He was in Czech Republic. He says, well, making movies, simple, 90% is casting and the other 10% is casting. And so I say business is 90% luck and the other 10% is luck. And then there's a whole other 100% that 90% of that is working your ass off. Yeah. And the other 10% is hopefully being smart enough to know how to put out the fires that started overnight, even though nothing changed while you went to bed.
Would you, one last question here, just wrapping up. You're great on camera. You're an entertainer to a large degree. You keep doing these podcasts, you keep doing these shows, you're going to get another phone call and it's going to take you back out to Hollywood. And all of a sudden you're going to be taping a show, doing something.
Probably not, but okay. I mean, look, again, I don't have an agenda about what's going to happen tomorrow.
Would you do it? Would you go?
Depends on,
Depends.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Depends.
Yeah.
I love the idea that I can be a voice for natural movement and for the value that it offers, down to things like, look, elderly people, when they start losing their balance, because they've been wearing big, thick padded shoes and their feet can't feel, so their brain shuts down. They put them in bigger, thicker padded shoes and they give them a walker. We had a guy very early on who I wrote an article, it was a blog post about some researchers who made these vibrating insoles. And they said, look, it helped elderly people regain their balance by, vibrating the bottom of their feet. And my blog post was essentially, why don't you just take off your shoes and go for a fucking walk? And so, so there was a guy who said, I'm 82 years old. I was looking for the vibrating insoles. I found your blog post. So I put it to the test, and that was 2 weeks ago. And I just threw away my walker. My dad, on the other hand, tripped, fell down, broke his hip, and died 2 weeks later when he was 80. So, we're all getting there.
Right.
The way they're treating elderly people is reprehensible. And as Irene Davis from Harvard said to me, if we get kids starting to wear your shoes, in 20 years, we won't be treating adults for the problems they currently have.
Ooh, that was powerful. Yeah, that's powerful.
Massive wake-up call.
Wow.
So this is an important thing.
Yeah.
And it would be great to be able to do this on a bigger platform. If some big company was smart, I'm going to give you the ultimate plan for someone like Nike. They give us a bunch of money, they buy us, they keep us alive, and they let me go out with one of their top engineers and we have public debates. I will destroy them, but it doesn't matter because there's some people who will never believe anything I say, partly because I look like this. Seriously. And some people who will never believe anything that guy says. And then there's a group in the middle. And if a big company owned both sides of that equation, they would profit. And I would be able to get the story out to more people than I could otherwise. I'm not going to beat them. That's not likely. If they eventually somehow make the transition to doing nothing but minimalist footwear, then I've won. That's cool. I would love that. It's not going to happen look, I harbor no illusions. Once we get to the roughly 50 million mark, bigger companies are going to do underhanded things like the guy who did the software.
Yeah.
I have no question about it. They've already done things to me. They've already taken my intellectual property. They've already had orders canceled from big retailers, and that was when we were at 1 million in sales.
Wow.
So wow. I'm not as naive as I would like to be.
But I think you're right. Eventually, one of the big shoe companies is going to partner with you in some way.
They're smart. They're smart. Some of them I know are not. They're smart, but they're not willing to get out of their own way and be really smart. They're like they can't handle the ego hit of having some young whippersnapper, and we're the same age.
Right.
But some kid who just walked into the business sight unseen and making sandals out of a piece of rubber and some string. But that's not the important part. The important part is, how do we help people? I know they think they're helping people. Great. I think they are wrong. There's lots of evidence that backs up my case, and
Yep.
none that backs up any case they've ever made against us.
I love the fact that you're helping people, you're making a difference, and you're building a business that is making money not only for your own family, but for all the people that work for you, for
Oh my
those
gosh,
families too.
it's the most satisfying thing. Not only the people that work for us, the people who work at the stores that sell our product.
That's great.
I mean, there are a bunch of stores. I did this with my software company. One day I realized that I had 10 employees, but there was maybe 60 people who were relying on me for their income.
Right.
I thought that was pretty cool.
It is pretty special, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is.
I like the idea that we get to a point where, we are supporting thousands of people directly and indirectly. I think that'd be fun.
It is a special feeling. Do you ever relax, my man? I mean, your energy level is pretty damn high. Do you ever, I mean, like if I saw you sitting still on a couch for 30 minutes, I would freak out.
You just have to come over to the house every night.
All right.
So Lane and I, we get home somewhere between 6 and 9, depending on the day.
Okay.
Have some dinner. Thank you, Trader Joe's. If it weren't for Trader Joe's with stuff you can throw in a microwave, we would be dead. And then we plop ourselves on the couch in front of a TV under a weighted blanket and try not to move for a few hours.
You do this. So all right. Good for you.
And then two other things. Early on, it was Lena's idea. Thanks to Craigslist, we got an infrared sauna. If I wake up early, like if I roll out of bed at 5 instead of 6, jump in the sauna, which is very nice.
Oh, I bet that is nice. Okay. All right.
And then on the weekends, I fall over. I'm serious. Like on either Saturday or Sunday afternoon, one of them, I will just fall over for 3 hours.
And you're like, I have to just crash.
No. I just fall over before I have the I have to crash thought. I don't get to I have to.
Are you going to do some stand-up comedy? I mean, I'd love to see you. I'd love if you ever go do that, like live mic night or whatever the hell they call it. I don't know what the terms are, but if you are ever scheduled for that, please ping me. I've got to be there.
Again, very kind of you, and you'll be waiting a long time. I don't feel enough of a compelling. Well, I'll say it this way. I often think of bits that would be a lot of fun to work out on stage. They don't arise in my mind. Wait, I'm going to back up and say this in a different way. When Lena and I were retired, we got very good at not doing anything unless it felt really compelling. Mm. And the things that we were compelled by then are things that no longer are compelling for various reasons. Yeah. So that's kind of the way I've done everything. And if in fact we do end up in a situation where someone hands us a big wad of cash, the bar for compelling will get raised significantly higher. If at some point the idea of doing stand-up gets compelling enough, I might do it, but I'm open to the possibility, but it seems unlikely. Wow. Because to do it, it's one night I'm on stage and I get off, and some people will know the comedian Jackie Mason. He was in the audience with two very attractive hookers. I mean, women who he met somehow at a party. I don't know what. And Jackie comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, you're a very funny guy." I said, "Oh, thanks." He goes, "You've been doing this, 2.5 years?" I said, "Yeah. How do you know that?" And he said, "Yeah, you'll figure it out." And so you can spot comedians and sort of their evolution. Things change as they have more stage time that you can't shortcut, except for a few very annoying people. Like John Mulaney is one of my favorite comics. He was so good from such a young age without nearly the right to be that good. I mean, he was just, man, incredible to watch. So for me to work out these bits and create an act that I would want to create would be finding somewhere to work, 5 or 6 or 7 nights a week. And that's just not as interesting as it was when I was 22.
Plus you're busier than hell right now.
Well, even if I weren't, like if I were somehow suddenly retired, again, it's not compelling enough to go hang out. I wouldn't be doing open mics because I'm sure I could get paid pretty quickly because I mean, I've still got stuff that I could pull out of my back pocket and, be a good opening act or middle act. But to be the kind of comic that I would want to be would take a couple of years of really concerted effort. And I don't know that I have that in me anymore.
Well, you're funnier than hell right now, just so you know. You're still very funny.
Oh,
just so you know. So I appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast. Congratulations, Stephen, on everything you and Lena are doing with Xero Shoes and the rest of your team. I mean, really, it's such a powerful story and a cool brand. I love the fact that you're super authentic. You're so real and raw, and you don't pull any punches. You don't there's no BS with you. You're just like, hey, I'm going to say it exactly like it is. And if you don't like it, that's cool. And if you
sometimes that doesn't work very well, but I get your point. Every now and then, like once every 4 months, I'm at the limit of my ability to not say something obnoxious, and I will, blow up and slam a door and then have to apologize to some number of people. And I'm very picky about things. I'm often referred to as the boy who cried 1 millimeter. It's like, hey, that's a millimeter off. They go, it doesn't matter. No one's going to notice. I went, yeah, look, it's different. They go, yeah, it's true. So, with all those things that you are saying wonderful things about, there's, as always with all human beings, another side as well. It's like when people say, do you have any mentors or, who do you admire? I go, I don't think about it, because I know that if I met them, I'd find things that I like and things that I think are, were horrible. And what do I care? I'm not that guy. So,
well, I know something I don't like about you. You ready? You want me to tell you what it is?
All right.
The fact that you have a beautiful head of hair and I got none.
You can do something about that.
I know. Stephen, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you being on.
Pleasure.
We'll talk soon. Okay.
I look forward to it.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right, cheers.
The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.